Well, Drew Pittman is an NFL sports agent. He has been for over 22 years, and many of his high-profile clients have played in Super Bowls or Pro Bowls. But an experience early in his career convinced Drew that a life of real significance is about faith, family, and football, and always in that order. And he shares about it in his book, First Team Dad, Your Playbook for a Winning Family. Drew, great to have you here.
Thank you, Ron. It's great to be here.
Now, Drew, give some of us the inside scoop now on this whole sports agent, NFL sports agent thing. You know, there's a stereotypical kind of Jerry Maguire cutthroat and show me the money and all that. And does that happen, or is that something you experience?
A lot of that is true, Ron,
Yeah.
and it's interesting. Football and the football business is just a microcosm of our world. But there's a lot of that goes on. It is a very, I would say, aggressive and competitive business. But it's also a great place to be able to have an influence in young men's lives.
All right. So you mentioned the sense of this microcosm and what happens in the football and the world that you're living in. So how do you see the parallels then to society and what's happening?
Well, what you see in the football business is, it's interesting because the football business is very time consuming. And a lot of the things that we see through competition and the things that we've learned, I know you're an ex-football player, and the things we learn from sports really carry over into our daily lives. And just managing time and managing the game plan is very difficult because things move really fast.
And family tends to get shoved to the side in many cases.
Absolutely. And it's hard in many industries, just the competition, as I said, and just the constraints on the industries that require so much time, and family is really not given the priority that it should be.
So then what inspired you to write this book, First Team Dad?
Well, it's interesting. I was coming down from my office upstairs in my home, and I got to the landing on my stairs, and I looked in the kitchen, and I saw my wife and my two boys. My boys were 9 and 11 at the time. And as I sat there and looked at them, I realized that time was really flying. And I have a saying that time just moves at the speed of life, and it goes fast. And so I had this idea when I got married and when we decided to have kids, that I was going to be a great dad and a great husband, and I was going to do all these amazing things. And I just sat there and I saw that God had given me these human beings, and I was to love and nurture them into the woman and the men that God created them to be. And I was pretty good. I was sometimes great. I was sometimes not so great. And I realized that I had better do something, or it wasn't going to happen. And so really, I did not start off to write a book. What I did was in my prayer time, just was asking God to show me ways that I could go from being good to great. And I wrote down a list of things and started putting them into place. And really, I saw some great results. And I looked at my list, and it was 30 items. And I thought, this looks a little bit like a table of contents. Mm-hmm. And so I just started writing. And I didn't know if it was just going to be for me. And then things happened, and God opened some amazing doors and really caused this to happen.
Wow. And Tony Dungy writes the foreword for your book. Describe your relationship with Tony.
Coach Dungy is an amazing man, and I think what a lot of people wonder with guys like that, and my father-in-law is in the same boat.
By the way, for those who don't know, he's a Super Bowl winning coach, yes, and he's a sports commentator now, very high-profile guy.
Yes, and an amazing man of God. More than anything, his accomplishments in football, more than that, he's just an amazing man of God. What you see is what you get with Coach Dungy. And I saw it before we even became closer friends, just in our dealings in the football business. And as we've become closer friends over the years, he just is who he says he is, and what you see is what you get.
Well, he writes in the foreword, referring to you, we realized that we had another common interest, seeing men lead their families properly and helping those families grow stronger. And so what do you think is one of the most important things you learned from Coach Dungy?
I think it's just the way he carries himself. And he did it on the football field. He does it with his family. You can see it in the books that he's written, which are all amazing. He carries himself with just a quiet and a calm. And the way he interacts with people is the same way he interacted with his team. He was known for not raising his voice. He certainly did not use some of the language that some coaches use, but he commanded respect just with his demeanor.
Early in your career, you write that you kind of had a pivotal moment where you learned a life lesson from another coach, and it's Coach Taff, Grant Taff of Baylor University, and there's another twist to that story as well. But just share a little bit about that important pivotal time in your life.
It really was, and it was before I had met Coach Taff, and I was actually sick. I was laying in my bed with the flu. I could barely move, and I was watching a football game. I grew up in the old Southwest Conference days, and I went to SMU, and Coach Taff's Baylor Bears were always one of our rivals. And watching this game, he was coaching the Sun Bowl game. It was to be his last game. And after the game, they won the game. They were not predicted to win. And his team picks him up, put him on his shoulders, and they're ready to carry him off the field. And he tells his team to put him down. And he walks over to the sidelines, and he grabs the hand of his wife, Donnell, and his daughters, and he walks off the field with them. And I still get choked up every time I tell the story, Ron, because it meant so much to me. And I have a great dad, and I have an awesome stepfather. But to see a man in a high-profile position not want to be glorified, but wanting to be with his family, it made a big impact on me.
And the rest of that story, you kind of alluded to it. He is now your stepfather.
He is now my father-in-law.
Sorry, your father-in-law.
Right.
Your father-in-law.
Right. And so a couple of years later, a friend of mine was working with Coach Taff's youngest daughter, Lane,
right,
and introduced me. And within 3 months, we were engaged.
There you go.
And it was just one of those things that God orchestrated.
Yeah. That's amazing. The very first chapter of the 30 that you talked about is called Redefine Success. And so how would you then redefine success?
It's easy as men especially to be caught up in the rat race of the world, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to be successful and to have a good career, and we can honor God with the works of our hands. We're called to do that. And so there's nothing wrong with that, but we can let that overtake what is really important. And my partner Craig Doman and I have made some conscious decisions in how we're going to run our company, and one of the things that we've decided to do is to put our family first. But the story I tell in the book is about Mike Minner, who was a all-pro safety for the Carolina Panthers, and Mike was a great man. He played at Nebraska. He's a man of God, and I tell the story about when he was at Nebraska, and he had that moment that no player wants to have, where he comes down, lands on his leg wrong, and he hears the pop. And it was a knee injury. And as he was laying there and he was looking up into the sky, and he tells this in his testimony, and he speaks at churches and to men's groups all the time, that he was laying there looking up in the sky, and all he had ever wanted to do was play in the NFL. And he knew that at that moment that could be taken from him. And so it was his moment to say, yes, it's okay to pursue football, but football can't be the most important thing in his life. And it never was after that moment.
And you also talk about it in families and relating it to football again. And all these are just great parallels. I mean, it's so clear when you're reading the book. But about creating a culture in your family. And what inspired that idea?
Well, every year I go to the American Football Coaches Association National Convention that my father-in-law runs and my wife produces for him. And one of my favorite things in going to the convention is to listen to the great coaches. And I'm always inspired by coaches, to no surprise. But I went and heard Coach Saban talk after he had won his first national championship at the University of Alabama, and he talked about when he took over the program and the mess that the program was in. And he said the first thing that he had to do was to create a culture. And they had had a culture there, it just wasn't a good one. And I think so often in our homes, we all have a culture in our home, but is it intentional? And is it what we want it to be? And so I love how Coach Saban, he created what he calls the process. And it's what helped really turn it around more than the X's and the O's.
And just, I'm trying to skip really quickly to a few different items here. Chapter 17, you say, let your faith be infectious is the title of that chapter. And what do you mean by that?
Well, it's real easy for us all to kind of become church people. And we go to church and we sit in the pews and we listen and we love the Lord and we do the church thing. But it's really important for me as a dad to be great, is to teach my boys how to have an infectious faith. And I tell the story of Daniel Sepulveda, who was one of my clients. He was
there's your family, by the way, in the picture. Yeah, continue on.
And Daniel was at Baylor University. He was a two-time Ray Guy Award winner, but he grew up in a Christian home. His father, Carlos, was the CEO of Interstate Batteries, very big company and known for living and walking the Christian walk in business. And but Daniel's faith was just infectious. And the way he was taught to live and the way he lives, just got married. Sorry, all you eligible bachelorettes. But it's something that we need to teach our kids.
Now, I know we're just about out of time, but I wanted to ask you this final question. Someone watching it, they're saying, my kids are grown. I think I've blown it. It's probably too late for me. You're talking about being a great dad. I had my chance. I blew it. What would you say to that person?
I would say be encouraged, because we all make mistakes. It is part of the awesomeness of having a relationship with Christ as grace. And I would say humble yourself. Go to your kids. Admit your mistakes. Apologize for it. And you're never too old. Your kids are always your kids. I have a friend who had a similar situation, and he went to his kids and just said, I'm sorry, I made mistakes, but he has an opportunity. The last chapter is create a legacy, and it is important that we're able to do that, and it's never too late, and the legacy lives on.
Good words. Drew, thank you so much.
Thank you,
appreciate you sharing this. First Team Dad is at our e-store. You can go to crossroads.ca and look for the e-store and get a copy of that. Share it with someone who maybe is a big NFL fan, all right?